teachers and pianists and friends. Today we're talking about how to teach the Little Prelude in C major, BWV 939 by Johann Sebastian Bach. It sounds like this. And on from there. If we haven't met before, my name is Jana Williamson, and welcome to my home piano studio in the suburbs of Chicago. This is one of my favorite teaching pieces, although I know I say that about everything, but I do love this piece. It packs a lot of punch in 16 measures, so it's very short. Many of the preludes that we play are quite short, and I love Baroque preludes. They tend to be more homophonic than other works that are more contrapuntal, such as the Inventions. And so therefore they can be a little bit easier for students to learn. And this one in particular has a grand introductory feel to it. You know, we think of a prelude as coming before something else. In the Well-Tempered Clavier, the preludes are essentially large collections of broken chords that warm up your ears to the key that the fugue is going to be in. So there's no fugue that accompanies this little prelude, to my knowledge, but it still kind of says to us, okay, we're in C major now. We've investigated the diatonic chords that are in C. We've had a little foray into G, the dominant, and come back very solidly to C. I think this might also be a student's first experience or one of their first experience with octaves, and just to have that solid C octave on the very first downbeat says, hello, here I am. I'm going to play this amazing piece for you. So most of my students have really enjoyed playing it for that particular reason. Today I'm looking at this in my old Vienna Urtext edition that I own. This was probably a hand-me-down. I have a lot of musical hand-me-downs. Any Urtext will give you a clean copy of anything by Bach. Of course, Urtext editions add fingering, but they don't add articulation and dynamics. So in this particular edition that I'm looking at, there's no dynamics, no articulation. I'm going to have to make those choices myself. If you're looking for a little more help, I do recommend, this is an older cover, but the Alfred Masterworks by Willard Palmer. This is just the book of 18 short preludes. This is also in the Classics Alive Book 1 with the red cover, and I just recommended that book on a recent video that covers the Minuet in F by Mozart. So I will link all of those books, including also the Henley Urtext, which is a little bit easier to get your hands on now than the Vienna Urtext is. I'll link all of those in the description below, so please check out the links if you're looking to purchase a good collection of these preludes. Okay, so our students need to know several things in order to play any Baroque piece. And like I said, this one packs a lot of punch. There's a lot of things to talk about in just a very short amount of time. This is in C major, so no problem there. We do have a lot of C major diatonic chords, meaning chords that are naturally found in the key of C. So C, F, G, D minor, those chords that naturally occur. And we have a lot of broken triads and broken seventh chords. It's almost as if Bach is using kind of a circle of fifths sort of motion to go from one chord to the next. So we start very clearly on C. He throws the B flat in there that takes you to F, second inversion. And that takes you to G, add the F in for G7, and then we're back to C. So you could do a little bit of blocking with your students. That's the right hand for measures 1, 2, and 3. Left hand in 4. Just so that they're aware that these are all broken chords. As I said, most preludes from the Baroque period are made up of broken chords in some sort of variation of how you want to break them up. Now, what's noticeable about this prelude is the way that Bach chooses to use the rhythm. He starts each of these little motives on one and. So there's an eighth thrust in the right hand followed by immediately the first note. The left hand gets to play that octave, but if I don't play that, it's 1 and 2, which takes you to this downbeat, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. This is so similar to the first Invention in C major. It starts on the E, the one E and there's a 16th note rest. Same feeling of just right after the downbeat. There's this little breath, and then you begin the main motive. And I do have a video on that piece as well, which I'll link, or you can click right up there. So in my mind, as far as articulation goes, students should lift after each of the downbeats so that they can then start that new motive. So when we get to measure 2, play the A, lift up, lift, now obviously I was playing a little bit out of rhythm, but you can exaggerate it in practice to really have them feel that breath in those places right there. We do have a lot of 8th notes in this. We do have 16th notes at the end. So your students do need to be able to quickly and accurately go from 8ths in measure 13 and 14. For that grand finish. I love that ending with the low C and the 6th. It's just really well voiced, I think. So make sure your student practices that scale. Usually what happens is students play the first couple lines pretty well, then they stumble over the Mordents, which we're going to talk about in a second, and then they just slow down like crazy at the end because they can't play it. So backwards practice is a great idea. Even just the whole bottom line followed by the last 2 lines, followed by 3 lines, and then the whole piece, because it's just 4, I guess it's 5 lines in this edition, but you get my drift. The last 4 measures, last 8 measures, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's talk about the mordents. These happen in measure 10 and 11. A mordent looks like a trill with that wiggly line, but it has the straight line vertically going through the middle of it. A mordent should be played starting on the note that's printed, the principal note. In this case, in the left hand, it's G. And it should go either a half step or a whole step down and then come right back. So in this case, I'm going to play G, F sharp, G. I'm sorry, those start in measure 9. I was looking at measure 10, but they do start in measure 9. The other part about these is that you want to start them on the beat. So when you play it with the left hand, that first G of the mordent should strike with the right hand downbeat. It's a lovely build, that chord progression. It's just so juicy. Make sure your students are able to hear the bigger progressions and not just getting bogged down in note, 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 note. Students oftentimes want to play those mordents before the beat, so it is something that you will have to practice. You can do it with 1, 2, 1, or you can use 1, 3, 1 if that's more comfortable. But it should be a very quick flip below the note. Something else that students don't always observe in Baroque music or in music in general is exactly when to release before a rest. If you look at the rhythmic patterns in this piece, we frequently have at the ends of motives a half note followed by a quarter rest. So for instance, the left hand in measure 6, measure 5 has the D broken chord and off. You should release exactly at the moment of the rest. On many harpsichords, there's actually an audible sound when you release the key as the quill goes back into its resting place. And so I try to train my students that the releases in Baroque music are just as important as when we actually play the notes. This is of course true on the organ as well. As long as you play a note, the wind blows through the pipe and the note continues to sound. But when you let go, it's a very obvious release. The other place for the release to be notable would be at the very end in the last chord. You play that chord and then all notes release exactly together. And that's actually part of the performance. In general, we do need to take a steady tempo on anything from the Baroque. Baroque pieces have one idea, one affect, and so you want to have one steady tempo. However, with many of the preludes, especially something that has that little flourish at the end, those 16th notes, I feel like there should be a little bit of an improvisatory feel, like you're tasting the different chords. You're trying them out, kind of thinking through what might the harmonies be in this key. So to my mind, it's okay for there to be little tiny bits of rubato as you kind of feel like you're improvising through this. So for the last 2 lines one more time, it might sound something like this with a little bit of tasteful rubato. hope that gives you a few ideas on how to teach this lovely Bach prelude. If you have other ideas for pieces you'd like me to cover in a future video, please leave them in the comments. I wish you all the best in your teaching.